I used to be like, I know exactly what I want, I know what I'm doing in life, and I realized that I actually were completely wrong.
Driekie Zondagh.
The newly dubbed CEO of Veldskoen.
She plans to fulfill the dream of making the shoes the most globally recognized South African brand.
And has partnered with movie star Ashton Kutcher.
As well as billionaire Mark Cuban.
Most people would rather keep it safe. What needs to happen for that individual to essentially pull the trigger and go completely all in?
I don't think everybody can be entrepreneurial. A true entrepreneur will just like do it. But I could admit that
Getting that, American investors coming in, Mark Cuban being one of them. How did that deal come about?
very, very long story short, Mark Cuban had this like weird interest in rugby. So when Steve brought up the Springbok shoe, you were like, it's the Springbok logo. I'm fortunate enough as a brand to be given this opportunity because we had Minnie Dlamini. I mean, the fact that a legend like Minnie Dlamini like went to Paris Fashion Week wearing the shoe, we've got these almost like hidden gems. Now that I've discovered that, I want to like stand on the rooftop and shout out to the world.
Driekie, I like to understand why people do the things that they do and what drives them. It helps me understand them better. What drives you and why do you do the work that you do?
Well, that's actually a very cool answer. And let me tell you now, I think many people don't actually often know the answer to that question themselves even, because I used to be like, I know exactly what I want, I know what I'm doing in life. I'm corporate, I come from a corporate world. I was convinced that I'm in the perfect career kind of like path and, know myself or whatever. And then one day I woke up after my hubby and his friends started, this like passion project called Veldskoen Shoes, which is focused on, celebrating South Africa, local manufacturing. And I realized that I actually were completely wrong about what the reason were for me doing what I did. And it's pretty much at that stage where I realized that I want to get up every morning. I want to go about and do whatever I do during the day, whether it's like my meetings at a job or walk at the beach, whatever the case may be, but I want to do it with one result in mind, which is achieving my goal and being passionate about what I do. So what I have decided that is, and it's very long-winded, is ultimately I'm passionate about South Africa. I have realized personally that I never acknowledged, or I've never realized how incredible our South African factories' manufacturing skill sets are. And for me, the fact that I was kind of like blind for so many years to the fact that we've got these almost like hidden gems in terms of experience, skill sets, and like the world doesn't know it, I didn't know it. Now that I've discovered that, I want to stand on the rooftop and shout out to the world, hello, this is South Africa, don't overlook us. We've got incredible people, we've got the most beautiful nation in the world, but more importantly, we've got skill sets relating to manufacturing that are most likely better than most factories in the world. And I come back that literally by traveling all over with local manufactured products and everybody like agreeing to the same point. So for me, my passionate reason for doing what I'm doing is literally just to play that small part to get the message across that A, South Africa have more positive things than what you realize, and B, whenever you see any product anywhere in the world, if you see a label that says made in South Africa, buy that one because A, it's going to be a better quality product than most likely anything else. I don't care if it's made in Italy or where it's made, South African products are better. And obviously, ultimately, that will result in like my true passion, which is just increasing jobs in South Africa and, making that bigger impact in the, just looking at the bigger picture. So.
I'm hearing a lot of passion in what you currently do. And do you feel like the corporate world, you weren't able to, tap into that passion and purpose and feel like you're actually doing something meaningful? What didn't you enjoy about that environment?
To be honest, so if I think back, so first of all, I'm one of those people who I don't regret anything in life. So I'm immensely grateful for like everything that I've learned in the corporate world. I've been in the corporate world for 20 years, just 2 different companies, like 10 each. And if I think back, the skill sets that I were able to like learn during those like 20 years, and I mean, I was blessed with like people that really invested heavily and, like allowed me to kind of like perform and understand, so many different aspects are just like, it's the next level, and that allowed me to do what I do now. So I'm grateful for the corporate world, but the difference is in the corporate world, you tend to like, obviously, and I mean, people say it, and like even the bosses, I mean, I used to say to people, it's not like that, but you're a number. In the corporate world, it's like, it's very, very rare for you to actually really, truly be part of a team, because in corporate, it's all about the bottom line. It's all about profitability. It will always be like, well, where I came from, 99% of the time, it will always be just like about focused on literally like growth only, irrelevant of what factors, result in it. The difference for me is, if I compare my life in the corporate world to what I do now, is that all of a sudden, it's not about that. Because if we had to like focus on the bottom line, then we would overlook the fact that yes, the quality is better here, but we would overlook the fact that I could import products, like many other people do ignorantly from like the East, and I can increase my bottom line dramatically. But then that doesn't result in passion. So for me, like the passion, like very rarely are associated in corporate. It's kind of like passion is for me, it's like more, it's kind of like the purpose you identify. And it's like, I think it's more of an entrepreneurial founding kind of like, mindset, where you're doing something because you're passionate about it, no matter what the reason is. I mean, we're all passionate about different things. But for me personally, it's like, I compare corporate to, yes, like maybe a big paycheck, well, always a big paycheck, probably a nicer car or whatever the case may be, but it's a lot more shallow, because it's all about money and like kind of like everything you do is just like money driven. I can tell you now, like if I look at our business and, most likely many other like founding and, like South African like entrepreneurial businesses, the reality is that what we do, yes, obviously, ultimately one day, the goal would be for, for like money to follow, but it'll be cool if it happens, but that's not why we're around. We're around because we're passionate and we literally go to work just to achieve like one thing only, and that is to celebrate our country. And I really think that is like so much more powerful than any large paycheck can ever be.
You mentioned doing something for passion and the money will follow. I think that specifically in South Africa, it's difficult to sustain yourself. Unemployment rate is high. And so if you're just purely doing something for passion and, the money comes later, not many people are in that fortunate position to do that. So how would you kind of advise that individual who wants to, follow their passion while still having bills to pay?
No, 100%. And that's why, I always talk about perfect world, because we also need to be real. And that's why I always say, like, I prefer passion over money, but I'm not ignorant to the fact that, there are bills to pay and all of those things. So what we have done, for example, if you look at like us and our passion and still like trying to make ends meet, although like downscaling happened on like a very large scale, but 100% worth it, is that we went like irresponsible and just like kind of like said, money is not important, we're just going to do this, and at the end of the month I can't pay school fees and I can't buy groceries, it's like, that's also like not the message we want to get across. So what we've done is, my hubby and his best friend, when they had this idea and they became like, they started thinking they onto something and they felt like they could make a difference. we have literally as families, Nick Dreyer and his wife, my best friends, and then myself and my husband, we sat and we said, okay, cool. We all agree this is going to be awesome, there's potential, it's going to make this impact, whatever the case may be, but it can't be your day job because we still need to pay bills. So my husband at the time being a quantity surveyor, like they always say like a bucky builder, but he had this little building company. His best friend Nick at that stage had an events company, and he was involved in the art industry, so you can hear nothing footwear related. They both carried on with their normal jobs, and literally at night times from their homes, maybe in our study and Nick at his house, over Zoom calls were building out this little project. Then it got to a point where, it got a little bit of traction, and I'm sure many people might have read about it. They tested a website with a photoshopped image, and then people bought, and they were like, oh my word, this product doesn't exist. It's literally we were kind of testing our theory. And obviously the first thing when they asked, when my husband mentioned it, is I said, just be honest, call everybody, tell them you'll pay them back, you didn't even know that your pay date's going to work, so well done. You were able to transact. And when I call these people, and majority of the people are actually, I think literally 98% of the people were like, that's cool, thank you for your honesty. Are you going to make it or not? And they were like, well, now that we know other people like it as well, we are going to go out and try and find a factory. Not being from this industry, so it's going to be a challenge, but now we want to go and see if we can make it happen. Most people said, it's cool, we will wait. Just go and make it happen. But bottom line is, as it picked up to that point, they still didn't leave their day jobs because obviously still you need to cover bills. So they carried on working from their homes, eventually started using our garage as a little, when I say storage unit, to put 10 shoeboxes at a time, drive to Postnet, manually, Nick's wife, she was pregnant at the time, literally manually wrote out the labels to post one shoebox to a customer or whatever. And we carried on like that until we got to a point where we knew that with serious downscaling, we can cover the critical, the important bills, while kind of taking this onto a next level, which is becoming a full-time job. And then we also didn't all do it at the same time. So I remained in the corporate world for, the company was founded at the end of 2016. I only joined March 2019. So I still for a good, a decent amount of years carried on in the corporate world, watching them have fun on the side, being very, very envious, but being responsible. It's we got to the point where, we kind of just okay, downscaled, paying bills. My husband left his day job, him and Nick now officially, this is the business we're focusing on. And we did that until we got to a point where we're okay, cool, now I can, in a responsible level, kiss my, corporate salary goodbye, downscale more, cut more, do whatever we have to, and then join that. So I think the reality is that don't be irresponsible. If you're passionate about it, you will not mind, or you will be able to find the hours, whether it's at night, my husband and his best friend did initially, but start it on the side so that you still have a form of income. And then obviously work hard at it for as long as you have to. Hopefully it's not going to be too long until you reach that point where you feel that you can at least cover the most basic bills, and give more attention to it full time.
I have a question about your husband and Nick starting this as a passion project and, putting that test website out, getting that feedback, which is amazing, literally getting your first-hand proof that this thing works,
it's
this concept works, right?
Yeah.
But most people are not, they still wouldn't follow through and would rather keep it safe, continue with the day job, continue, running that business.
That's me, you're describing me. And that's seriously.
So a question that I had is what needs to happen for that individual to essentially pull the trigger and go completely all in? Of course, finances aside, but do you think that it's a mental block? Do you think that it's fear? What is it?
I'm going to be honest, and this is my view, might not be the right one. I personally honestly believe that all of us are born with certain, I can't say skill sets because you need to hone into them, but I think all of us are obviously we're different, and I think we've got different talents and different capabilities, and you talk about left brain and right brain or whatever. I don't think everybody can be entrepreneurial. And in order to do what you've just described, in order to do what Nick and Russ did, I mean, I admire them so much because I know that I would never do that. And I wouldn't do it because I'm scared or something. I just don't have it. I don't have it built into me. Like, I'm too systematic. I'm too black and white. Like, it's like they've got that, like, they have that capability as true entrepreneurs to have, like, came up with an idea and said, not overthink it and just, like, go ahead and do it. I will overthink it. So I think there's a difference between it. I think entrepreneurs are the coolest people ever because I think they're quite rare. And I think many people would like to think they're entrepreneurial, but I think a true entrepreneur, that's willing to, like you said, like, how do you know when to go the next step? I don't think you need to tell them to take the next step. A true entrepreneur will just, like, do it. Do you understand? So I think it's like you get, like, different kind of, like, vibes. And I think for me the main thing is, and that's why I enjoy telling our story, especially because he's like my husband and his best friend. I mean, they are the incredible people who had this idea. They were entrepreneurs who started it. I was fortunate to at least, like, I mean, I know everything, like, from day one, looking from the side, but I could admit that I would never, in fact, I thought they were, like, crazy at first because I overthink things. I was like, why do you think it will work? And they were like, we just do. And I'm like, but why? It's like, I'm rats and cents and factual, and, it's like, so for me, it's cool to have seen that impact of, like, a true entrepreneur, you, like, take it to the next step, and, like, and then in the same token, also, they take the next step knowing it's not always going to work. So can I tell you now, both Russ and Nick, they've done many similar things, not always together. I mean, like, for instance, like school days, but both of them have tried many different, like, small little ventures, but that's failed. So, and they also, like, they always, like, say, it's like, it's very important to know that this wasn't, like, their first, like, it wasn't the first time that they've tried something and just magically it resulted in something that actually would acknowledge and that would accept it and that the world liked. They've tried many different things. But as entrepreneurs, they weren't scared to keep on trying. So they kind of, like, they went in trying, like, knowing that it might not work, but they didn't care because they're entrepreneurial. I, on the other side, for example, I'm not entrepreneurial, but once there's an idea, I'm passionate. I love business. I love figures. I was fortunate to, have, like, skill set across, like, many different industries, like weird industries. I mean, like, finance, some sales, like, logistics. I do my own exports, like, I can, not that I'll do imports now, but I used to, like, it's like I've got all these different, like, kind of, like, skill sets, and I'm very systematic, and I'm very, like, efficiency driven. So once somebody have done the entrepreneurial bit and got the the project on the table, then I can go, ooh, I know what to do next. Like, I can literally, it's like, now I know, it's like, I've got the external sales, like, vibe. I can, it's like, I know how to, like, do all the different selling tools. I know how to implement all the different, like, efficiencies, to, like, improve, like, from time management to cost reductions to, it's like, that's where I come in. And then I go, okay, cool, and I know how to, like, pull the income statement together. I know how to look at the balance. But again, I can do that, but I can't, like, start something. So the reason I'm saying that is that you will find in many businesses, and, it's like, it's something I always, like, remind my hubby of. It's once a business grow, and, like, very often the true founders and the entrepreneurs eventually kind of, like, it's like they tend to not always stick around once it, like, grows that much, because, then it kind of, like, various, like, different skill sets that come to play. And I always say to him, don't ever risk feeling like you're not, kind of, like, feeling that you're out of your depth, because none of this would have been here if it weren't for your
vision,
entrepreneurial vision and willingness to actually take the next step.
And when you initially stepped into the business, you came in as COO. How different were your responsibilities when you first came in compared to your responsibilities now?
I must be honest, like the actual honest only thing. So first of all, just like in terms of like COO or CEO, whatever the case may be, we've never been overly title driven. It's like we still say like we're a full, small family owned like business. And when we say family, it's not necessarily blood family. Like in my team, let's say we're 24 people, all of them, we family. Do you understand? So it doesn't like, it's not like myself, my husband, and Nick and his wife, it's family. So first of all, like we very big on respect and like, all of those kind of like things. And one person's not better than the other. In fact, like we need all of us like to make it work. But obviously, when I came in, at that stage, we had a listed company as a shareholder, 49%, Brian Jaffe. And at that stage, he owned Long for Life, which were the holding group for Outer Warehouse, Sportsman's Warehouse, Sorbet, and then he had 49% of Veldskoen shoes, which were incredible because that obviously gave us and Nick that kind, that like helped a lot to kind of like take the next step. And we've realized, like being part of like a bigger group, you need that kind of like corporate governance and structures, whatever the case may be. But internally, we've always kind of like just like worked together. CIO kind of like, like made sense because of, like my various like skill sets, and logistics and, whatever the case may be. But in terms of like title and like now CIO going to like CEO, it's actually between myself and Russ and Nick, we're still just as close as a team. The only thing that's changed for me, in all honesty, like there's one change only that's changed in my kind of like job or duties or responsibilities since, the kind of like official title change took place last year, is me doing this. The reason we've made the change, was more in line of kind of like achieving our now more global goals. And what's happened is we obviously, and it's so exciting, and that's why I look a bit frizzled, and because with American time zones, it's like I now at the night between 10 p.m. and kind of like 1 a.m. have my Zoom calls with like between the Atlanta and the LA teams, but when we took over our American business, essentially, we obviously, like, again, we had to be responsible and say, okay, cool. So we've now invested heavily. We've taken over the management of the American company, which before we were only a 50% shareholder of. The reason we wanted to take over the management is because then we could employ more South Africans. So we could move the entire function of everything that we've done before, customer service, paid advertising, marketing, social media management, etc. All of those things that were kind of like outbranched to like different USA agencies like, Boston and New Jersey and whatever. We wanted all of that to happen in South Africa because A, we know South Africans can do a better job in general. B, of course, South Africans are going to be more passionate about this brand, which is like so South African. So, it strikes through in your efforts in terms of marketing. And most importantly, we knew that we could then just like grow, grow South African teams and, like employ more people. So long story short, when we went out to buy back our shares and we took over the management and, we've employed more people and introduced like nighttime shifts and whatever the case may be, then between our three kind of like, if you want to call it execs, myself and Russ and Nick, we had to like determine now who's going to focus on what. And the reality is, again, and it talks about entrepreneurial quality skill sets, which I value so much because like I know that between Russ and Nick, that is like, I rate them on that because I know I don't have it. We were able to like determine that if you look at South Africa, Russ and Nick initially with their skill set and, like ability to, like talk and, enjoy, kind of like going out and just be the typical founding entrepreneurial, like, humans, they were able to create a brand awareness and get the story across in a way for us to like, increase our audience and make people fall in love with us and all of those kind of like things, which means that me with my slightly more corporate background, but passionate, can now come in and just like make sure everything happens and, like kind of like grow on that. And make sure that we deliver on promises. But if you look at where we are in America, although our American business were registered in 2018 initially, I mean, it's many years, but for all these years, we've only been direct to consumer online. And that's quite an important point, and that was why we were so, we really, really knew that we have to buy back that 50% of shares, because with that one sales channel in a country like America, we have seen since 2018 to last year, the amount of sales and shoes that were sold. I mean, I shipped like 20-foot container loads.
How many?
The 20-foot container loads to America on one sales channel, with limited effort by American teams who do it as very corporate-y, not even caring. So imagine what the volumes can be that we can ship from South Africa, South African factories. If South African manage it and we increase the sales channels like we did in South Africa, instead of just online, branch slowly into business to business, very big and corporate uniform, branch into retail, start small boutique, slightly more formal independent retailers into chains. I mean, can you imagine what that will do to manufacturing? So because we've acknowledged all of that, when we've decided to buy the shares, we were like, okay, cool, now what? I said to them, America is where South Africa were right at the start. They need brand awareness. Because right now we're only on one sales channel. And the reality is, nobody can do a better job with regards to creating brand awareness about this fashion product. Nobody can do it better than Russ and Nick, our two initial founders. So that's why we essentially said, okay, cool. So you've done your incredible work here right at the start. I've implemented all the, the initial kind of tools and systems or whatever to kind of just help it grow.
Initially, getting that, American investors coming in, Mark Cuban being one of them. How did that deal come about, and what is the impact? Did that allow you to essentially grow into America and establish a footprint there?
But now that's what I spoke about earlier. It's I always want to say to people, please just know that although if you look at our brand, and this is even me as part of just the family, if you look at it, I can imagine if I didn't know the story, I'll be like, oh my word, how did they do that? It's that team, what is their magic power. We were so blessed and so lucky with the most random things. So let me tell you about America. Well, let's actually take a step back because before we've got America, so when Russ and Nick founded, when after the Photoshop images and admitting to the people who bought that, they're very impressed that the website actually worked. I've noticed money in their account, and B, the product doesn't exist, but if you like it, now we know we're onto something. From that point, they knew that obviously the next step is to kind of yes, supply South Africa, but in order to really, really make a difference in terms of selling more shoes, to have more shoes manufactured, they need to go global. So at that point, they were fortunate to attract Brian Joffrey's attention, first of all, and they had this random phone call, and at that stage I was in my corporate world, and I knew Brian Joffrey very well in the corporate, the best. He founded this power company, whatever. And I remember Russ called me and he was we just got a phone call to say Brian Joffrey is sending his deal team to Cape Town to come and see me and Nick. I was laughing so hard, saying, oh my word, you are so gullible. I cannot believe that you actually for a second think it's that Brian Joffrey. Come on. Literally, you guys are still operating from our houses. A, how? And B, why? And I remember he kind of went, oh, well, he kind of 40Ds, but you'll see when this guy called Brad is going to arrive what it is. And it was Brian Joffrey. So, but for example, so that was very cool. And it turned out that, I don't know, somebody random saw a gimmicky kind of website, and one of the customers who purchased a pair of shoes, and, lucky enough for Joffrey to, when he opened it, liked it.
Wow.
And he was okay, cool, I want to be part of this. It's obviously yeah, but anyway, so that was number one. That then allowed Russ and Nick to do, remember I said to you, they've realized that ultimately they need to go global outside of South Africa. with Brian Jaffe's investment then, and they only, it's like he was only a 49% shareholder, so we always made sure that they were majority. Brian Jaffe's shareholding allowed them to go to the UK, which was kind of like, it's like the easier, if you look at American UK, it's way easier to like kind of like reach UK being this giant called America, and for reason the UK were like an easier kind of like next step, where Nick's wife is from, she's British. Okay. So that was kind of like a easy in. So the two of them went travel to the UK, suitcases like, full of shoes. They've managed to like via network, found like a small little warehouse, like a guy that said, listen, like I currently warehouse and distribute, on behalf of some other people. I like you to, it's like obviously usually I only work with big businesses, but you seem cool. I'll give you a small section of my warehouse and, I'll pick and pack your orders from here. So then the UK would kind of like tick on autopilot, right? Then they were like, okay, now it's America. Then I started looking at America and at options. And America it's tough. It's tough to get in there. It's not just like physically far and different, like it's more of a mission to like kind of like get to. And it's also, I think because of a sheer shape and size, and it's like there's so many more things to consider in terms of risk and like whatever the case may be. So they were like in the back of their mind thinking, like we don't even know how to proceed. Then they got, I think they first got an email, or it was also like some random phone call of a guy that called him and said, I'm Steve Watts. And he said, and he had like an American accent. He said, I am South African, but I'm actually in Durban right now because, it's like some, unfortunately got after a funeral in his family. And he said, I literally last night had a braai with some of my old school friends because I've lived in America for like 15 years or whatever. And one of the guys around the braai were wearing these like weird looking like shoes with blue soles. And I actually quite like it. And, I've managed to track down your numbers. Like, don't you think it will work in America? And Trust and Nick were like, oh my word, like, we know it will work in America, but like, we have no idea how to even like start this process. We've looked, like, we've tried. Like, it's obviously, it's a bit of a mission. So Steven said to him, listen, I'm flying back to America tomorrow. Let's have a coffee at the Durban airport and let's have a look and like, it's like I am South African, I'm married to an American, lady, obviously, whatever, but let's chat and see if we can come up with some ideas. And again, I remember Abby calling me saying this is what happened, and I'm like, really? So you don't know us out from a bar of saying you and Nick are going to fly to Durban for a coffee at the airport to discuss, and that the entrepreneurial spirit, they were like,
yes, why not?
Yes, like, it's like, I don't have the money, but yes. And I was like, okay, cool. Still carrying on with my corporate life thinking, wow. They flew down, they met this guy called Steve Watts. In the conversation, Steve said to him a little bit about myself. He said, when I moved to America many years ago, I entered Shark Tank, which is this American, like entrepreneurial, whatever. And he said, I had this gimmicky, it's called slide handboard. It's like a surfboard, but goes onto your hand. I don't get it at all. But anyway, he won. Him and his like American wife were there, whatever. They won this like Shark Tank. And Ashton Kutcher and Mark Cuban, and like I think there were like 8 different celebrities that were like the judges or whatever. And part of the prize of winning this entrepreneurial thing was that they could select out of these celebrities, like they all had like some little holding company, like trying to, obviously investing into like many different businesses. They could select like one of these guys. And they got Mark Cuban and Ashton Kutcher who combined, which I didn't know. Mark Cuban and Ashton Kutcher were movie star. It's so random for me. They in business together. And they've got like this holding company, and they selectively invest in like, I don't know, probably like thousands of little businesses. And they've got teams that do input and whatever the case may be. So Steve's words were, so I'm in Slide Handboard. I'm involved, I'm in this business. And I'm just telling you this now because I want to look at I want to be involved in like getting Veldskoen into America. But part of my agreement with Mark Cuban and Ashton Kutcher's team is that I need to disclose any other business interest that I'm going to take. So you were like, I just need to ask for approval for me to start another business, which is going to be, kind of in partnership with you guys. So they were like, sure. And again, Russ is like, can you believe his Agus? Like, he's got something with Mark Cuban. And I'm like, no, he doesn't. Like, why do you just believe all these so crazy things? So Steve went back to America. Then Russ and he got a phone call from Steve. And he's like, listen, okay, cool. So, and he does speak directly to Mark Cuban and Ashton. Because, I mean, obviously it's so many years now. He said, okay, so I've done my disclosing, but just to say, just for the record, are you guys supposed to meet? Like, it's not going to interfere with my attention on, like, our main company, but da-da-da. He said, and both of them were like, can you just tell us a little bit more about this, like, other business? Like, can you show us a picture? And how cool is this? Steve then, obviously went onto our website, and the picture that he randomly kind of, like, clicked on was our Springbok branded Heritage Veldskoen.
Wow.
Mark Cuban turns out to be the biggest, because rugby
Sports
never
brand.
used to be very big in America. It is now with the World Cup coming, but at that stage, Mark Cuban had this like weird interest in rugby as opposed to football.
Interesting.
So when Steve brought up the Springbok shoe, you were like, what's the Springbok logo? And immediately you were like, wait a second, like now you've touched like a nerve, like tell me more. Very, very long story short, I said to him, Steve, we would have been happy for you to do it, but we feel like we are going to lose out. We like this idea. We want to be part of it. I mean, come on, how does that happen? So Steve called Russ and Nick, and again, and that's why I'm saying, we were blessed with these like crazy things. It's not because any one of us had like a superpower to like, like go and get Mark Cuban and Ashton Kutcher's attention. And then the next minute we got a phone call from Steve Watts at some random hour to say, okay, so change of plans. And like I were with us in the car because it was like nearly midnight, I think, from a time zone point of view. And I remember I was like, okay, cool, it's not happening. It's cool, like, And we were like, no, it's going to happen, but are you okay? Do you think you and Nick are okay with like changing the original discussion and include Mark Cuban and Ashton Kutcher as partners? And you can imagine, like, we went, let's think about it. But yeah, so that's how it happened. So literally, that's how that happened. So the next minute, not only did we, from a brand awareness, I've got, it's like we, like teenagers, have like all the little clippings of a newspaper cuttings, and at that stage, I'm still just like literally pulling over from my corporate job, like going, oh my word, like, this is insane, like
a story of many synchronicities, like just happening.
But it happened because these guys' heart were in the right place. They didn't get like, nobody wrote them a check to start this business. I'm going to go back to the fact that they worked like they worked for like quite a like, I think it was just over a year, literally during the nights after they performed their full daytime jobs. But they believed in this so badly, like, and I don't know if you know, but it was, they were irritated because our South African team at the Olympics in 2016 walked out onto the world stage, and they were so like, they were like, we are proud of our country, like, we need to like play, like there have to be a way to change this. It have to be South African, and it have to be proud, and and it have to celebrate this country. So they just so badly wanted to do that, but they worked hard at nights. They got up early in the morning to do their day jobs, were exhausted at night, but carried on because they were passionate about this country. And I give it to them. And that's what rubbed off on me. That's why I eventually got to a point where I'm like, you know what? I used to think I'm like Mrs. Corporate and high heels and, like, bookcase and travel all over and, be like one of the young, only women in a boardroom full of men and whatever the case may be. But I rather want some of that. I want some of that passion and excitement, because like I feel like I'm losing out. So I think their hearts being in the right place have resulted in, and obviously ours work, I think it's resulted in attracting good people, good kind of like networks, like it managed to get them into rooms that they kind of like it allowed them for the next thing to happen. And I know it doesn't always work like that. And I'm going to say again, both of them have tried some of the things many times before where it didn't happen. So let's also just acknowledge that it's not like a one, it's not like just like an absolute like lucky kind of like period. but their hearts were in the right place. And I personally think because this specific entrepreneurial like business idea of theirs was so South African centric, I think that's why ultimately we've been lucky and blessed, and like just like in the right rooms at the right place to
Yes.
kind of have a knock-on effect.
Collaboration is also key for companies to grow, for brands to grow.
It's critical.
And you guys collaborated with, of course, like the Springboks, but also DHL.
We collaborate a lot.
I want to know specifically that DHL campaign. What made that so successful? If you could unpack that.
It was like it's probably still like, if I think back, one of the like coolest like moments in our like kind of like business. I remember we got a phone call again. I got a phone call like to say DHL want to come see us, and I'm like, I use FedEx in our business. I've got a great relationship. So I'm like, I want to come and steal FedEx's business. It's anyway. So long story short, they came, and I'm all ready for this logistical kind of like discussion and trying to say to them, first of all, FedEx have like won me over, not just by the rates, but they believed in me 3 years ago when you guys, when many other people, it's just so brilliant, kind of laughed at me when I asked an account. But that weren't the reason they came. Obviously, that would obviously follow because, we got to know them, and, they're an incredible company. So they were like DHL. But they came to us to say to us, like the weirdest thing, they said that DHL Global have been known to do fashion collaborations, and we all kind of went like, really? And they were like, just like Google. And when you Google DHL fashion, you see runways like of DHL planes in the background, and all these like gear, and Billie Eilish wearing this like DHL t-shirt, and we were like, okay, that's random. I didn't know it. Like, it's like it's never kind of like been something I was exposed to. But what about it? So they said they have decided all their previous fashion collaborations. So obviously again, and this is what I think makes DHL immensely cool. They are a powerhouse, right, globally. They're a gigantic company, but they use these collaborations kind of to share their limelight with other people. And they were saying that they have this DHL Global every like roughly, I think, 3 years, and I think at that stage they've only done like 3, so maybe like over the 9-year period. They've selected a brand, whether it's like apparel or footwear before or whatever, to do a DHL X something collaboration, and like create a massive campaign, which isn't just like fun, but it's a talking point, and it speaks to their collaboration kind of like model. And all their previous collaborations were, one were I think an Italian brand, one were a brand in Hong Kong. Like, it's always been like, like kind of like worldly, global brands. And they sat there, and it was the craziest moment, because while they were talking, you kind of like feel like you understand where it's going. You're like, but surely not. And they said to us, like, they've identified, and this was 2020. This was, in fact, it was like the masky period, it was just after like we could kind of like start going back. So we were, from a financial point of view, we were at that stage where to survive, because all the retailers obviously cancelled their orders, like literally, like life just like changed. I've gone from being the first external brand listed at Woolworths literally was September 2019 to March 2020, like have all these Woolworths orders and like cancelled orders. But anyway, so we sat and I'm like, I've got zero marketing. I've got no money to spend on marketing. And I'm like, kind of like, I hope it's not where you're going, because that's incredible, but like, we literally can't afford it. And they started saying to us, they have identified us. I think we were one of like 3 brands kind of like shortlisted in South Africa, because they decided it's going to be a South African, And long story short, not only did we make the kind of like, we make the cut in terms of like the 3 brands we're going to talk to, but they also said to us, and part of our collaboration, our efforts in acknowledging where we are in the world right now, COVID, bizarre, like we are real about like the pain that's going around. So part of that is that we are pretty much as DHL Global, don't stress about cost. That's essentially what they said. Like we want to do good. They ask us to come up with a campaign, like zero kind of like idea in mind before the time. Obviously, footwear, but it weren't just coming up with a design of a shoe. We had to come up with a campaign. And again, like if I look at our marketing team, I mean, we have been blessed with the most genius, creative, little small team of like in the entire world, because they came up with this campaign called Dear Everyone. And our CMO and copywriter at the time, well, that's it, she actually was just our copywriter, Anna Greenfield. She wrote this like kind of like poem, and I mean it will be on the website. I'll send it to you one day. But it was so heartfelt with regards to like it was like a message to the world to say, yes, we acknowledge that this has happened. We acknowledge the devastation, and it's like we're not ignorant to like like where we are right now, but you are still here. We still have like this to be grateful for. But it was unpacked in such a manner. Like I remember, like I'm not an emotional person in general, but I read Anna's like poem, which ended up being the entire campaign, and I'm like, oh my word! Like I almost feel embarrassed for like feeling depressed this morning, and like, do you understand? Like feeling like, like the world's against me, it's like I'm almost feeling, oh my word, I'm still lucky to be here. I'm still like this. Do you understand? It just like it shifted the focus from being so immensely almost like angry about like this virus called COVID and the devastation of finance and to we still have a lot to be grateful for. Yes, we acknowledge it happened, but let's take the next step forward and let's do it together. Kind of like vibe. It's like we're strong, we're human, like we can do this. And well, obviously DHL selected, like they selected our brand at the end of the day through like our incredible marketing team efforts, and then we had to design a shoe. And again, remember we own the brands, but our footwear, we don't manufacture our products. So we partnered with Hopewell Footwear, who's this incredible family-owned 45-year-round factory in Durban that are just salt of the earth people, the Sheikh family. And they manufacture under license, but I always say to people, like, if you look at our shoes, besides the fact that they manufacture and they source the raw materials locally and, put it all together, they are so incredible at what they do, but we sometimes will have an idea of a design, but they will perfect it, and they'll do it in the typical South African kind manner, where you still feel like it's your design, but, they are a genius, like, they are these footwear, incredible people, and there's a few factories around like that. But I remember we said to them, okay, cool, we've now kind of got the campaign under wraps, but now we need to design, and it needs to be completely different. It needs to be completely different to anything that we've ever done, because at that stage they started talking about what all they have in mind, and we've realized there's going to be Paris Fashion Week, and like they've mentioned things where we were like, oh my word, like what shoe are we going to do? And this is when it becomes tricky. It had to be completely different, but it still had to like resemble Veldskoen, right? Because for us as families, like if it doesn't resemble Veldskoen in some shape or form, then it doesn't align to our like passion and all of that. So between the Hopewell team and our marketing team, they managed to come up. I don't know if you've seen the shoe. It's a limited edition. We managed to come up with the shoe that kind of like ticked the boxes that were critical. The inner sole literally have a label of, have a DHL label imprinted. We've got true to our passion, African artists, like hand painted, and it's like it's those cool little nuggets. Like if you look, you'll see +27 South African dialing tone. You'll see like the table mount, and it's always like things that's like really that we love about our country. DHL colors, whatever the case may be, platformy, to kind of like fit that catwalk world, which I personally am not a fan of, but that's their style. So I think we kind of hit it out of the park. And
wise words. This has been super insightful, and I could continue asking you questions for the entire day. This last part is like a quick fast fire where I would like if you could answer in a word or a sentence.
Cool.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Best piece of advice in one word. A word.
Or a sentence.
Hire for passion and heart. It's going to be a sentence, not one word, but like literally, like I'm thinking, this is great advice and pass it on. Don't hire for degree only. Like don't just look at that. Hire for passion and culture, and build on that rather. And it sounds silly, but I say that because, again, coming from a corporate world, you do the exact opposite. You only interview, you only look at people that's got the exact qualifications. I've been in both worlds. Trust me, the best advice I ever got was don't just stare at the qualification. You can most likely do a lot more with somebody that doesn't necessarily have a qualification, but they've got the right mindset, the culture and value set. So don't be ignorant to that. And coming from corporate, that was a very, very valuable lesson I learned.
I 100% agree. Skills can be learned, but character is very difficult to build.
I'm telling you now, that's such a true story.
What's the worst piece of advice you've received?
The worst piece of advice, wear high heels and just like aim to like make more money and, I don't know, create like a reputation and sounds crazy, like, but I think like, and maybe it's different eras, but kind of like, growing up, like, don't give my age away, but, it's kind of like, again, like going back to the olden days, it went like always pretty and kind, but always like as a woman, like you want to be in the room where like, it's like, you want to go and like own like this corporate world and, make sure that you're this powerhouse person. And again, for many people, that will fit their personalities. But yeah, and it's weird because I don't regret following that route initially because, I've gained the experience that I can now apply in Veldskoen, which is like phenomenal. But the reality is that no matter who you are, you shouldn't have to like prove you shouldn't have to do something to almost like prove something, if that makes sense. You shouldn't have to like chase this corporate dream just because you want to be part of this like group to prove that women can be powered. Do you understand? Like,
Definitely.
Stop caring about what other people do. It's probably the long and the short of it, but that's just me.
That's wise words. 3 common mistakes that CEOs, entrepreneurs make that you've noticed.
Common mistakes, growing the basket of products too fast. In fact, I think, especially from an entrepreneur point of view, I think that, like they've got this incredible passion and vision and things that, that's obviously rare and phenomenal, but I think they sometimes forget that they're kind of like taking it slightly slower, might result in like this company actually being around for longer. I know of many companies that, in my mind, had fantastic ideas and they should have still been around, but they're not, simply because they didn't actually apply themselves in terms of like, let's look at the base. Instead of like starting with 10 ranges or instead of going from like 1 range to like 3 ranges, it's like they just like try to move too fast. Like slow down, like be passionate, but slow down just enough so that you can still keep a handle on your cash flow. Because I know of many, many sad stories where people didn't do it, and like that's the worst mistake you can make. And I know that's like, I always say I'm a boring one between myself and Russ and Nick, because they're passionate and, like in their nature, it's like growth and like, this. And I'm like, 100% agree, but let's make sure that I've got enough racking and shelving for this because I can't go and buy more right now. Let's make sure that the amount I can pay all the bills for that. Like, do you understand? It's always like make sure that you have at least like 1 Driekie in your life. It's like that's slightly more boring, calculative, Still passionate, but just make sure that you consider kind of like your next steps like carefully so that you can keep on growing as opposed to grow from nothing to something to nothing tomorrow. I don't know. So working capital, like people don't think about it. It's interesting.
Yeah, that's definitely a big one. I think it also comes down to effectively managing your cash flow and not just, having that passion and burning through your cash flow.
And it's a hard balance,
of course, because you want that growth.
It's an immensely hard balance. And I find it myself because, I'm like with figures and number kind of like person, but I've also got this incredible passion, so it's with kind of like juggling and trust me, like, I don't think it's actually possible to get it right all the time. So yes, you get grey and, you make peace with that, but it's kind of like constantly just making sure that you manage it to that level where you're not hampering the company's growth, but you also, again, always talking about one of your first questions, going forward and starting something, just be responsible to do it in a way where you can still pay your bills at the end of the month, or at least not, put yourself in a position where, you lose your reputation.
Driekie, thank you. This was super insightful, and just thank you for the impact that you're making at Veldskoen. You guys are doing amazing things, creating a lot of jobs, and also just you're building amazing products. And I think that's why all these synchronicities happened. It's because the founders built this amazing product and they focused on value. They took their passion and turned it into something that's amazing. And it's just proof of what happens when you focus on that product, on that passion, and not the money and the fame and everything else.
And it's a hard statement, right?
Yes.
It's like hard, but like
Definitely.
It's something to consider. Well, thank you so very much. And all I can say is like, this has been such an honor to be here. And to anybody that ever like listen or would know about you guys, like I can tell you now, you guys are onto something, and I can see the work that you do in your passion is just like next level. So thank you for having me here. Thank you for listening. And if anybody ever need any advice, like we don't know a lot, but I can in the very least tell everybody that I'm not ashamed to share mistakes made, lessons learned. You know, it's like we sharing is caring. So if you're South African and you're a startup and you want some advice, please reach out, get my details. Like, we would love to be involved in other people's growth as well.
And also buy a Veldskoen.
Buy local. Buy local, that is like priority number one. And then priority number two, once I've convinced you to buy local, my next thing I'm gonna convince you of is to own some of our shoes. But priority number one, buy local.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.